So I'm delighted to welcome you to another episode of the UKAI podcast. And this week I'm joined by Zahra Shah. Zahra, it's a delight to have you on the podcast this week. You've been part of UKAI since very much the beginning. And I'm really excited to learn more about you, your background, what you're working on, and how you're helping to shape UKAI as it develops. So could you maybe start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for having me. And I really love being part of UKAI. I find that you're very much focused on helping the AI sector, which is a big gap in the UK right now. Personally, my background, I'm an AI and frontier technology expert. At the moment, I serve across several boards, private, public, third sector, but I started my career with Accenture. So I was at Accenture for over a decade, worked mostly on AI and machine learning based fintech and regtech applications for the capital market sector. And a lot of the projects were looking at regulatory compliance with things like KYC, Basel, MiFID, cross-border sanctions. And what I observed is the investment banks, the capital markets services actually were ahead of the curve. They were early adopters of AI and frontier technology. And also it was because it was expensive, very error prone. There were a lot of issues, especially around the acceptance of people, getting people to really be trained on the system and to start using it correctly was always a challenge. And then since then, I moved on, became an entrepreneur. I ran a property portfolio, then I ran a charity that went on. I still serve as a trustee of the charity. Then I co-founded an AI-powered RegTech venture called Sears, which provides privacy compliance platform for companies to comply with global privacy regulations. So in the UK and Europe, that's GDPR. In USA, CCPA. LGBT in Brazil, CPPA in Canada. And we worked with the ICO on their regulatory sandbox program to develop the child consent management platform with their support. So we were able to, at that time, and I think we still are the only company that provides a solution to comply with the Children's Code. I subsequently went onto the board of Sears. I became an investor. Lead investor, and then I also served on the ICO's technology advisory board, helping the ICO in terms of the privacy implications of AI and Gen AI applications, because I'd been on the journey with them through CS leading the development of the child privacy consent platform. And since then, I was approached by a lot of companies. They were looking to have people with AI and frontier technology expertise on their board. So I qualified as a board director. I did the Financial Times non-executive director diploma. I can highly recommend that if people are looking towards to build a portfolio net career. And now I'm on several different boards. A company that AI transformation consultancy that I'm very heavily involved with called Nexa Quanta. I led them to partner with IBM because I knew IBM from my Accenture time. And we work with IBM on their what's the next responsible AI platform for enterprises. Although we can deliver other, platforms like Copilot and Gemini and any other model, the reason we really like working with IBM is because the What's the Next platform is the only platform that I've seen in the marketplace that has a very strong governance aspect to it. And it has three components: an AI studio that allows you to fine-tune and using any foundation model. You can use IBM's own model, which is the Granite model, or you can use any open source model as well. Then it has a data component, and the data component is, is very flexible. You can use a data lakehouse or a data warehouse, and it allows you to make sure the data is thoroughly cleansed, so it's properly prepared. And if you're using the Granite model, then IBM is so confident that all the data complies with privacy regulations, and they've removed any hate, abuse, and profanity, that they give you a third-party indemnity insurance, which I don't see any other supplier do that. And also the reason they've been able to do that successfully is because their models are small models that are targeted for specific enterprise purposes. So, they will have a model that's tied for, specifically tuned for an investment bank. And then it can be trained using the specific data from the investment bank, and only the people within the company are allowed to use it. And the final component they have is the governance platform. And what that does, it looks like a dashboard where you can actually see all of the AI workflows in your organization, whether they're from IBM or Google or Copilot, any vendor. And you can build in, it depends on how you fine tune the features. But let's, for example, you have mitigation built in for model drift or hallucinations, or let's say bias. It will flag it up in a RAG structure, red, amber, green. And then when you see there's an issue, you can then implement the mitigation process. And this happens in real time. So what we have seen through some of the projects that we have done at Nexaconta, we very much focus on governance, risk, and compliance. So the regulated sector. And we are our expertise is only on the AI aspect. We don't deal with the data and the infrastructure. We partner with other companies to do that. And in the AI area, we do two things. We work with AI solutions right from design, development, deployment, implementation, training, to transform a business model or business area. Let's say you want to implement an HR assistant or a HR agent, to be honest, an agentic solution as well. So that would be specifically for that business area. The other thing that we do is software transformation. In the software transformation, we look at working with tech companies or even startups or with larger enterprises where we use certain APIs or we can use plugins for enterprises in the legacy system to generate value from that legacy system, or for software companies that need their software to be enabled for AI. So those are the two, I would say, at a very high level, key areas that we focus on. And then we're pretty much sector agnostic. We can, through subject matter, although our subject matter expertise is very much around governance, risk, and compliance, but we work very well in industries that are regulated.
Yeah. Wow. So thank you, Zahra, for giving us that overview. It's really good to know about how that very comprehensive sort of product suite exists. So that insight into what IBM are doing, but then particularly how Nexaconta are plugging into that as well to enable companies to use that. That's really interesting. I'd love to come back to some of those themes in a minute, but I wonder whether you could just sort of, from everything you've seen, from that really sort of wide view you have of how different companies are using all these different types of tools, what's the one thing that you're most excited about at the moment in terms of AI tools and technologies?
I think what I personally find exciting is that it really can free up people from, having to do the repetitive, mundane, administrative tasks. Things that, you very spreadsheet focused, where you're looking at numbers, where you're so dragged down into trying to make sense of the data that you lose sight of what you need the information for. You lose sight of how do you utilize the information that you have to really generate value from your business, from your client, from your process. So from that point of view, I find this is very exciting because it can free up people from doing the day-to-day drudgery to actually focus on more on areas that really can generate value, add value, if used responsibly and correctly.
And could you help us with some case studies from businesses where you've been working, case studies that demonstrate that type of value? Because I think that's always where it's really useful to understand, how have companies tried to use some of these AI tools to, whether it be productivity, to get rid of that drudgery bit. What does that actually mean in terms of how it's helped them to grow or to solve other challenges?
One of the key things that we have seen, and which is a very low risk use case, because some companies are a little bit nervous, they don't know where to start. The thing that we have seen, two areas that we've seen that worked very well, and then people felt more confident to expand on it. One was a knowledge assistant, where this organization had thousands of documents in the legal area. So they had to physically go through all these documents. They didn't even I wouldn't even say if they didn't have a proper repository. It was literally like files on your laptop, that sort of an environment, and it was a nightmare for them to go and find out. Let's say I'm looking at a specific case. I want to find all of the different documents that are relevant for this case, for the last 100 years, or even before. Very difficult for them to do that. This was actually a legal department that we worked with, and we implemented a knowledge assistant, and this made it so easy for them. They literally, the scenario was very much like a conversational interface where they could literally go and search for specific cases, specific keywords, that was kind of built into the prompt design. That even a person, you didn't need to have any technology expertise or understanding. Anybody in that company could use that, and they would get the information straight away. Before, it would take them sometimes, to find the right information. It could take them days. And when you are looking at, time-dependent cases or legal cases, it's time is of the essence. The other area we've seen, and that's an internal case. So once you're very comfortable that it works internally for your, staff members, and they're trained into using it, then you can really roll it out to your clients as well. Because doing it internally is low risk. Companies always feel nervous when they roll something out for your client. So once you have tried and tested it internally, then you'll be more confident about, rolling it out. So for example, they could use the same thing for their clients, where if the clients are searching for specific information, they could use a knowledge assistant and get the information as well. But obviously it would have certain guardrails built in. They would not be able to get, proprietary information, only information that people have consent to be able to view that information.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of things to consider there, aren't there? Because if you're building one of these new processes, one of these knowledge systems, you also mentioned before things like small models as well, which are going to take a particular company. I can see that they would be very valuable, but there's also quite a bit of risk in there as well. You've got to think about the privacy, you've got to think about the security, the governance, all of the liabilities. Now, where does somebody start to think about those, and how many resources? Because I can see that working well in a big company where they've got the resources, the teams to look at it. But as you start to get into the smaller businesses, it becomes harder to be able to devote the time and resources to that, right?
Very good question. So the way we do it, and I think that process can work for any size company, is to start off with responsible AI principles. And our advice is, when we work with people, we always do a workshop, a strategic workshop. And in that, we define your high level AI strategy. And your AI strategy should align with your business strategy. What I mean by that, we have had cases of where people, I would say, some companies, I would say, suffer from FOMO, where they want to just have AI because XYZ is using AI, or the competitors using AI, or it's cool. But that's not the right reason to do it. It should only be utilized if it's solving a business problem for you. For example, if that business problem can be solved by something else better than AI, then maybe AI is not the right thing to use for that problem. So we start off with that, because otherwise you're starting off with unrealistic expectations. So you start off with your high level strategy that must align with your business strategy, and that will help you define your use case. Because what we see with some clients, that's why they don't know what the use case should be, because they're so focused on X is doing that. But our advice to them is, but X has different strengths to you. You as a company are different from that company. So maybe what is working for them may not work for you. And that will help you define your use case. That, let's say, for example, this company has a massive issue with retention, and they get people, for some reason they're not getting the right kind of people, or there's something not going right in their onboarding or training, that they're not able to sustain it, and their retention is very high. They have to so there's something not working there in their recruitment. Either they're not getting the right people, or the processes, or there's not the right kind of support, and the people leave, for instance. And they would, I'm just giving an example, making it up, that,
Yeah.
so for them, they could look at, okay, how could we use AI to maybe solve this problem? Can we do that? You can do that through an HR assistant, a very basic, high level HR assistant. For a layman, I would describe it as almost like a chatbot. Like if you're a small company and I have, you have your internal uh, SharePoint or your internal website, whatever you want to call it, or your interface for your employees. Let's say I've joined and I want to know about what is the policy regarding, when I'm really ill and you need to figure out what is my leave policy, how do I sort out medical insurance, how do I work out, my pay package or compensation on if I have to take extended leave. For instance, I'm very ill. So the HR assistant can help you with that. You can ask those questions. It will give you guidance on what the policy is. It'll calculate your holiday allowance. It'll calculate your pay, holiday pay. It will even calculate your, the kind of package you should receive. Those sort of things. So it will free up the HR person to then only focus on, strategically, what sort of skill sets are missing in the company, how do I get those skill sets, so they can focus on the higher level tasks rather than the day-to-day, answering HR queries, managing people's, pay slips and all of that.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? Be able to get the human to work on things which humans are good at, and then the machine do all the stuff which they don't need to get a human involved in.
I just wanted to mention, and this HR assistant worked very well for IBM internally. They call it Ask HR, and they have managed to generate over 20% rate ROI just from using Ask HR, the internal HR assistant. And once it was fully let's say tried and tested and worked well within IBM, now it's available as AI agent for clients.
So interesting, because IBM has always been associated as being one of those industry leaders. It's one of the brands, and there used to be that strapline: you don't get fired for buying IBM, right? And that was even back in the day of mainframe computers, because it was like the Rolls Royces of machines. Now, of course, it's all about consultancy, but in the world where people are thinking about all of those risks we talked about before, the risks about security and privacy and compliance and governance, I wonder in the same way whether the brand of IBM in this instance coming along and saying, well, we've got a solution that handles all the HR for you, which is our own proprietary product, here you go. That actually is the same sort of almost no-brainer response for someone to say, oh, well, I can trust this brand because I know they'll have done all the hard legwork to make sure that product is de-risked for me. But does that, what does that mean then for businesses who are like some of the businesses you advise, where they're not on IBM, they're trying to build their own brand and they're trying to convince their customers to trust them? How are they going about winning over the trust of those customers?
So what our kind of way of working is to follow responsible AI principles. So for those companies as well, once you have your strategy, it must follow what we call the responsible AI principles, and we have a framework. It's a pyramid structure, and at the top of the framework are the guidelines around transparency, explainability, data privacy, security. It follows, I would say, all the UK government's AI policy principles that the 4 regulators are meant to follow. And ICO has been kind of taking the lead in terms of on the AI side, and they've been following these responsible principles. They have a framework, actually. ICO has a very good framework called accountability framework that can help you with some of the responsible AI principles and practices. So from these principles, then you derive your practices. One of the key practice for a large company would be to have an AI board, but for a smaller company that might not be feasible. So in that case, for like a startup, you at least designate somebody in that company with that responsibility. Who will you hold accountable? who, it could be like a committee. If one person is, cannot do it, maybe perhaps CEO is working with some subject matter experts within the organization, or an AI expert, or you're working with a consultant outsider. So somebody that you have to work together with to implement the policies, procedures, tools, and then somebody who will be held accountable.
Okay. Yeah.
That is very important.
Yeah, I think a number of topics you covered over there, which we could talk about in a whole nother episode of the podcast, right? I think explainability, you mentioned quite early on there, that's a really critical thing that I'm particularly seeing become very important. We've just done a bunch of roundtables which you came along to, and one of the ones which was on diversity and bias. I think out of that, the realization that there's a lot of the AI systems and the tools and services that rely on them, they work in a black box. It's very hard to understand, and therefore when decisions are made, we don't know how to understand how those decisions were made in order to make better decisions in the future. But the understanding of how the systems work is quite complex. And if we want to get policymakers to understand it, then they have to have this, there needs to be better explainability. So this concept of XAI, explainable AI, is really something which is, I think we're going to see a lot more of over the next year as companies start to kind of invest in explaining it in very simple terms. And I think that leads into the second point, which you touched upon, which was accountability. So if you can show that you are being accountable and responsible as a business, you can build trust. And then that's how the smaller businesses can start to build up that reputation to compete alongside the brands who already have that trust, like the IBM. Zahra, we're going to have to start to wrap things up because unfortunately we're sort of running out of time. But the one thing I really wanted to kind of also find out more about, we've been talking a lot about the Women in AI group. So it's something that we're both kind of really keen to see develop within UKAI and see how we can support increasing the number of women leaders in the AI industry. You're also taking the lead on this a little bit. I wonder whether you could sort of explain how this came about, where we're at the moment, what's coming. Yeah, over to you.
So basically, as you know, there's a great need for addressing the issue of bias in large language models. There was a recent report by UNESCO on this, that it's a various different causes. One of the reasons is that a lot of people who were involved in the development of these models were mostly men. So they didn't think about the impact on women or differently abled people or LGBT or the elderly. It was not intentional, but it was just something that wasn't a part of the design practice. And the concerns that were raised is that it can have negative impact on society. For example, in cases where you're using AI tools for recruitment, and these tools that have these built-in, bias in the actual model, they might just ignore female candidates, and that's already happening. The feedback that I received from Women Defining AI launch, there were a lot of ladies there who said that when they change their name to a male-sounding name, they get a response, but when they send their CV in with their own name, they never hear back from the system. The other issue is around financial products and financial fraud as well, because if a system is using AI, it is more likely to reject female candidates for loan applications, for credit card. So that's a risk as well, because it's got inherent bias unless it's not addressed. And then healthcare is also an issue, because some of the clinical trials are not even conducted on women. So which is a massive issue. They're developing products and drugs for women that have not even been tested on women. So so these are some of the challenges that our women are facing as a result of use of AI systems that are not mitigating the bias. And I think UKAI is really has shown foresight to address this. We now have set up a Women in AI working group, and the aim of the working group is to address some of these challenges through various initiatives, events, training, workshops, and getting women engaged from different industry sectors to understand what their challenges are and try and help them.
Amazing. And thank you for taking the lead in this. I think there's going to be a lot of more we're going to hear about this over the next month or so as we bring in that sort of network and try and support it. And, you know, what are the objectives? What are you hoping to get from setting up this working group?
Basically, the key objective is that, you know, for women in the sector or looking to get into the sector, this is a place where they can, a safe space where they can find support for some of the challenges that they're facing in terms of how do they address bias, how do they find the right kind of training, how do they find the right kind of tool to address certain issues, do they meet up with like-minded people who can help them you know, develop the right kind of policy, processes, practices, maybe even their strategy. And we hope to do that through very targeted initiatives, you know, series of roundtables, workshops, you know, I would say like panel discussions, and kind of, I think our approach is very much going to be like people-centric, focusing on the people to understand what is their concern and look at creative ways, because we're very entrepreneurial, to meet those challenges and resolve those problems for them.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think a key part of that is also that it's not just the problem for women to solve. It's
Exactly.
also something which men need to take responsibility for as well, and say that this problem will only get solved if men help as well. So we need to be partners and allies in this. And UKAI, you know, we're really excited about being able to help facilitate this with your help to then sort of actually set out what it is that needs to get done. So just to kind of wrap things up there, because unfortunately we're going to have to kind of start to finish now, but it's been great to talk to you about so much we've covered here today. But can you tell us about how we can find out more and stay in touch with Women in AI, the working group?
Sure. Yes, I agree with you, Tim, that we need male allies. And there was actually a recent study by Harvard Business Review that identified that gender diverse teams actually lead to 15% more profitability. So there's actually a financial case for it. To get to know more about Women Defining AI, or sorry, Women in AI working group, and to get involved, you can go on to the UKAI website, ukai.co/women, and sign up, you know, keep involved in what we're doing, and we will be in touch.
Brilliant. Now, really looking forward to seeing how this develops over the next few months, Zahra. Thank you so much for your help. It's wonderful to have you on board, driving this initiative, bringing all your expertise and getting involved in this. And it's been wonderful to talk to you today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. It's been a pleasure.